Welcome to the Korea Society's Young Professional Night. YPN features industry professionals who share their career experiences and advice with the audience. And this program is made possible by the generous support from Yang Sun Foundation. We are thrilled that you could join us in person tonight, and a very special welcome to those of you who are watching this program online, as this is simultaneously live webcast on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't, please subscribe to the Korea Society on YouTube. Tonight, we are excited to welcome to the Korea Society Miss Eun Sun Kim. Eun Sun Kim is the Caroline H. Hume Music Director of San Francisco Opera and the Principal Guest Conductor of Houston Grand Opera. She has enjoyed additional successes at the Metropolitan Opera in New York, where she's currently conducting La Boheme, Los Angeles Opera, Washington National Opera, and Los Angeles Philharmonic, among many, many others. She's also a regular guest conductor at opera houses and orchestras, just simply too many to mention, across Europe. So welcome to the Korea Society. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule to be here.
Thank you for having me.
So a quick reminder, you will have a chance to ask your questions to Eun Sun Kim later this evening. And if you're watching the live webcast, you can send your questions via email, artsandculture@koreasociety.org. So before I begin, I wanted to ask how I should address you, because we're so used to calling a person of your profession and of your stature as a maestro, but it's also a male noun. So do we call you a maestro or do we call you a maestra?
You can call me just Eun Sun by my name. That's what I prefer and what I'm saying actually in the organizations. But maestro would be in Italian actually a noun for conductor, whether it's male form or female form. Because maestra in Italian would mean a teacher at elementary school. So the Italian orchestra musicians laugh actually when they hear somebody calls me like maestra, because they feel like they're in school now. So actually the correct form would be maestro, although in Spain they call me maestra all the time. And I
So
think
it
it's the
depends.
difference. Yes.
Since we're in the United States, we'll just be casual and call you Eun Sun.
Thank you.
So let's begin with your childhood. Since you grew up in Korea, you were born and raised in Korea, and since you were Korean, I'm pretty sure you played some sort of classical music, classical musical instrument when you were little. So when did you start playing? And what was your childhood like? And what made you become interested in classical music?
Well, I was a musical child. Actually, my mom was musical, so we had a piano at home. So it was very natural that I would come to play piano. I was, I think, 3 or 4 years old the first time. But then we realized, or my mom realized, that I could play some music when I heard it from radio or something. So without any score, without music sheet, I used to play some music. So everyone knew that I was musical. But I I would get terrible stage fright on the stage when I was playing piano. So on a competition when I was teenager, there's a there is a piece called Black Keys of Chopin. You have to meet all the black keys on the keyboard. I couldn't find any black keys on the keyboard, and it looked all white. So
Oh,
my stage fright was that terrible. So I knew that I was not going to be a professional pianist, actually. Yeah.
and then you went to actually university and majored in composition.
Right. So there were several turning points in my life to make that career in music. So when I was in high school, our high school music teacher would ask, like, is there anyone who can play piano, and please come up. And I somehow ended up playing piano in this music class, and she asked me, why don't you study piano at university? You don't want to go there? And then And I said, no, no, I got stage fright, and I don't think I'm going to be a professional pianist. And then she asked me, actually, how about composition?
Hmm.
And at that time, I had no idea, actually. I didn't know that one could major in composition at university. So that was very fresh for me, kind of a fresh shock. And it somehow sounded really attractive to me. So that's how I started actually studying composition.
And then while you were in university, that's when you started conducting as well.
Right.
So, what did it mean? What was your idea of a conductor when you were growing up? And what did it mean to you?
Well, the conductor or the profession of conductor, I don't think I paid that much attention to that when I was growing up, because I thought it's too far from my life. It's just irrelevant with my life.
Mm.
But when I was a student in composition, majoring in composition, I used to play still piano for my colleagues, like singer colleagues or instrumentalists, in their lessons, like listening to their lessons, how they learn and how they study and what their professors say, etc. So then I ended up actually playing as a rehearsal pianist in our university opera production, and that was La Boheme.
Mm.
What I'm conducting now at the Met. So that was kind of beginning, and the conducting professor who was conducting that La Boheme, he observed actually how I would interact with the singers and how I would rehearse and listen to them. And he asked me, why don't you study conducting? So that was the beginning of my, yeah, maybe conducting career.
So, you started with opera.
It started with opera, and it was not my idea. Actually, it was his recommendation. So yeah, I took a lot of time actually to consider it, whether I really want to take this path. But at the beginning, it was not really about becoming a conductor, like professional conductor. It was more about okay, let's learn it,
Mm.
what it is about, and at at least I learned maybe the basic skills so I can rehearse my pieces when I compose it.
Ah.
And at that time, I really wanted to go to Germany actually to study the further composition. So it was a moment of really changing moment in my life as
And
well.
you did go to Germany, and then
After I studied actually conducting with that professor in
I see in
Seoul,
Seoul.
yes, yeah.
And then you were supposed to study composition, or did you decide to study? Why Germany?
Because I thought, the classical music that we know, Beethoven and all the Schumann and etc., it comes from Germany. And I was always curious about the language, the culture, the country, the mentality. I was really, really curious. So all this, whether it was conducting or going to Germany, it started actually out of curiosity
Mm.
always. Yeah.
Mm. So then, so what? Since you just mentioned that your first sort of experience, kind of getting into conducting, was opera. What is the biggest difference between conducting opera versus, say, a symphony or a concerto with another musician? For us non-classical musicians, it just seems very different what you would be doing. Is it different or is it kind of similar?
Well, in terms of music making, it's same, of course. But the very obvious difference is, of course, the orchestra is in the pit, so you cannot actually see me, maybe just my ponytail. And in the symphony concert, we are all on stage. Also, the biggest difference is the singers would rehearse actually almost 4 weeks or 5 weeks to make a new production, in the symphony concert, we rehearse for 2 days, and the third day would be already a concert. So it's more intimate relationship between the conductor and the orchestra, and there are not really much, how should I say, possibility of like an accident.
Mm.
Whereas in the opera performances, because a series means sometimes 5 performances or 8 performances of that one single piece,
Mm.
and you would have an accident or a really unexpected moment. And also for that, I'm always checking with the singers before each performance, before each show, going to their dressing room and checking in with them. How are you feeling today? Are you a little more tired or than the other day, or are you really fit? So you really have to check in with them. And also, the other difference is, of course, in opera production you have stage director.
Mm.
So if it's all the conductor, let's say in the symphony concert, in the opera, you have the stage director, you have the light designer, set designer, and it's really a teamwork and stage management. So the audience cannot see like behind the stage. There are a lot of people who move the set and the stage. So that's the big difference.
So your title right now is the music director of San Francisco Opera. So in terms of what you do for San Francisco Opera, what are you responsible for and what are you not responsible for?
I don't know what I'm not responsible for yet, but I'm responsible for any sound or any music is produced by San Francisco Opera. And well, in terms of conducting, that when I'm on the podium, I'm doing my job. But as music director, you also have a lot of meetings and you do the planning and casting as well. So it's a lot of work. But I think there was perfect timing for my life as well, because I had been guest conducting almost a decade before I took this job.
Mm.
So I was also, again, curious about having a relationship with a company or with one orchestra, like building really the relationship in a long arc, long period, long breath. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully it will be a very fruitful relationship because you just started actually. This is the first season
Yes,
with.
it is still my first season.
So many journalists point out the fact that you're the first woman, and that actually you're the first person of color to head a major opera company in the United States. Since you didn't, we just talked about it. This is actually the first time you're living in the United States.
Correct.
You lived in Korea and Europe over the years. What does that actually mean to you? That you're the first woman and first person of color to head the major opera company in the United States. Does that
You know,
mean anything?
no, because I'm actually very often, of course, as a conductor, not only as a music critic, but as a conductor, what does it mean to you, and what's the difference between being female and male conductor? What I used to say is, nobody gets to choose their gender or ethnicity when they are born, right? So I was born to a Korean family as a girl, so I didn't choose my gender. But also, when we are working in the rehearsal room or in the performances, I think it's not really that much obvious. Oh, there is a woman on the podium. It's more for the audience to watch me, that or to realize the difference. Oh, there is a woman on the
Mm.
podium. When we are working, actually, it's the same thing. When I'm rehearsing with an orchestra, I would not think like, oh, there is a female flute player or male bassoon player or something. There's just no time. We're just working as a professional. So I haven't really thought about that fact. But in the States, especially, I'm getting a lot of feedback um, especially at the backstage door when I come out, there are a lot of people who say to me, it's really inspiring to watch you, not only the music, but to just watch you as a young Asian woman on the podium leading the major orchestras, etc. It's really inspiring and encouraging as well. So if I can be that kind of figure for many people, I'm really grateful that I was born to a Korean family as a girl.
But also, given your background, growing up and being sort of educated in Korea, your sort of formative years, do you think your approach to classical repertoire, which is not Korean, you're normally working with Italian or German or you know, Russian repertoires. Do you think your approach is different from, let's say, an Italian conductor or a French conductor? And or is that Korean thing or is it just your thing?
Interesting question, by the way. I think the influence that I took in Europe, actually, in my late years, it's bigger than I got it in Korea,
Mm.
musically speaking. But I think as a Korean, because I grew up in Korean, I think I'm using a lot of, in my language, in any language that I'm speaking, when I rehearse, I think I'm using a lot of we. Let's do it. We do it. Can we do it? Etc. I realized that when I was rehearsing in Germany, a very old German violinist, that he pointed out, you use a lot like, can we do that? Can we do that? And actually, you're not playing it. So when you want something to the violinist or the violin group, just say it, you do that or do it.
Mm.
But he would not think like, can we do that? So I think it's more Korean thing, maybe also my thing. But I'm thinking really in group and in teamwork. So I think it was influenced by Korean culture.
Mm. And perhaps that's what makes you such a great conductor because you are thinking as a group instead of just an individual. Um, but you also mentioned that there are many tipping points in your career, such as choosing to study composition and then choosing to study conducting. But when you are considering your career as a conductor, was there like sort of the major moment that when you realize that okay, this is it, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm really gonna do my best to do this for the rest of my life and make a career out of it. If there was a sort of that moment, what would that be?
I participated in the competition in Madrid, in Spain, and when I got there, actually, I didn't know any word in Spanish. So not even hola. I just went there and then walked up on the podium, and I was supposed to. Every candidate was supposed to just conduct the orchestra without saying any word, and they played actually how I imagined. So that was the point, really, the time where I thought, okay, I could do this conducting as my job. That
Mm.
could be my profession. That was, I think, the point that where really music spoke and music let us communicate each other, and where the orchestra actually understood me with my just gesture or body language without saying a word, even though I didn't know any of their language. Yeah.
That's really fascinating to hear that they could sort of understand understood what you wanted by just watching your gestures. And I wanted to ask you, speaking of gestures, I heard an interview where a conductor, it was a female conductor, who mentioned how she's sometimes conscious of certain gestures that she makes as a woman conductor because she didn't want it to look too feminine, quote unquote, and therefore she didn't want it to appear not authoritative. Um, maybe so I was just wondering, do you ever think about your gestures and how you would appear to your musicians? Obviously, you must because that's how you communicate with them. But do you ever wonder about, oh, do I look too girlish or do I look, um, or maybe the other way around? Do I look too harsh? Do I look too forceful? Do you ever consider that?
Um, I I don't think I do. Maybe when I consider about my gesture, it's just to communicate in music, but not as like based on gender. So I I don't know.
Mm. But then also, we've been talking about your schedule for last few years, and you're constantly traveling, and you're working with so many different group of people, and wherever you go, you are literally working with huge number of people.
Yes.
What was the biggest sort of the challenge for you during your career? What's the most difficult part?
Every day is challenging, actually. Being a leader. Um, so I'll give you an example. When I go there, let's say I'm arriving at the Met and the start day. Usually in opera production, of course, you have chorus, orchestras, and singers. That means also stage crew. That means a couple hundred people. And on the first day, you're just meeting them and you have to lead them immediately. So you're being a leader. So it's every moment is, I think, it's challenging. Yeah.
Then again, so yeah, very simply put, when we think of conductors, you're a leader. You're leading this group of people. So, what do you think it means to be a leader, and how do you try to lead people?
Well, as a leader, I don't think the leader has to know everything better than the other person, especially in music, because the orchestra musicians are all professional in their instruments. The conductor is actually there, and we know how that all works, but the real professionals are them, so the musicians. And what I learned from my teacher, the first conducting teacher in Korea, he said, you know, the conductors don't produce any sound really physically. We do our gesture, we swing our arms, but there is no sound coming out of our body, but the sound is coming from the orchestra or the singers. So our job is actually to make them play at their best. And I really try to find, like, see the best of each person so they can really enjoy and give the best sound that they can because they are a professional. And whether it's orchestra musicians or singers, I think I'm trying to find that moment that we're really agreed on that kind of expertise level between them and myself.
Hmm, that's very interesting. So, let them do their best and sort of create um, sort of the atmosphere or whatever it is to let them do what they do the best.
Right, because you cannot actually beat the wisdom or the experience of older professionals. And again, my teacher in Korea, he told me, whenever you really have to remember, whenever you do your first, let's say, Beethoven Symphony Number 5, super famous one, but you really have to remember you are doing it for the first time, but the orchestra musicians may have played maybe 200 times. So how are you going to lead them? So that's really a good point. That was really a good point, and I'm not forgetting it. Yeah.
Hmm. Have you ever met any resistance because you're so, okay, forget about the Asian female, all that part, but because you are so young?
I
Or are
think,
they used to seeing young conductors come up and
well, young conductors have always that kind of challenging moment because it's learning by doing, and you really have to make mistakes to understand or not to replicate or repeat the same mistakes. I used to watch a lot of conductors, and I also was told, I think young conductors are told that you should watch uh, more the adult conductors, older conductors, especially bad ones. So to learn, oh, I should not do that or not to do mistakes. But when you get to be really conducting or rehearsing, you do all the mistakes that you didn't want to do. And then after that, you realize, okay, I did that mistake, but I'm going to move on. And now finally I don't repeat the mistakes. Yeah.
okay, without naming names, what was the worst mistake you saw?
I saw, I cannot remember. But I know the biggest mistake I did. And where I thought, okay, my career would end here today.
No, why? What was it?
Because we had an opera performance of Traviata in Vienna, and there was a stepping in soprano. The soprano who used to sing the run got sick, and then we got a step in soprano, and she would do a little different here and there, and there was kind of fishing her because we didn't rehearse. That was like a first moment in the performance, and at the very end of the opera, I was kind of released. Okay, I did that, and then I had to wait one more bar to give the very final chord when Violetta dies on the stage. But I forgot that.
Oh,
So I just gave my downbeat really like for the fourth and the half of the orchestra followed me. The half of orchestra
didn't?
didn't. And then everything got like and in the end in this tragic moment, everyone started laughing. So there was a moment, really, I thought, okay, my career would end today.
But you can laugh about it
I'm
now.
still, yes, no, I
Yeah,
can
and
laugh
I'm sure
about
you're
that.
never gonna miss that
Right.
beat ever again.
Right.
So, as you mentioned, you spent many years in Europe, working with many different opera houses and orchestras over there. What do you see sort of the biggest difference between the classical music, should I say, scene or industry in the United States versus Europe? And what was your sort of the biggest challenge for you when you came to the United States, or what was the difference?
I think, well, the biggest difference, not in music, but in this system, the system is so different. Also, the musical or cultural organizations in Europe, they are supported by government, versus in the States, it's all like private funds. So you have donors and board members.
Fundraising.
If yes, so you have to attend a lot of out of music events, which is I'm really grateful because they are actually the donors are very how should I say passionate
Hmm.
for that. It's not just like I'm giving you money and it's really they are really captured by this art form, whether it's a symphony concert or opera. I'm really grateful for that. But that would be the biggest difference I noticed in the States. And it, there are little difference in terms of rehearsing or the pace of rehearsing. It's very strict to take a break in the States. It's so strict.
I
The
would.
union rules are very strict compared to Europe.
Oh,
So it is also, there are always the break time. Of course, you would start at really in time and then you have to end it. And then there is a break time. I have feeling like in the States it's going by second.
I would have thought it would be more, the union rules would be stronger in Europe.
In different way,
Got it.
yeah. But it's there is a little flexibility in terms of rehearsal pace, but in the States it's very practical in a way.
Got it.
But there was a surprise moment when they said, no, you have to stop now. And then it's a break time. And then we move on. So that was, I think it's also a culture thing. It's not just
Mm,
restriction or
right.
rules, but every country has different, of course, culture. And yeah.
Right. Absolutely. But do you think there is a particular challenge in the classical music world in the United States that you did not anticipate?
I don't think it's particularly classical music, but nowadays the live
Mm,
performances are actually competing with Netflix or
mm-hmm.
YouTube. But I was impressed. Actually, I think I heard in an interview where Bong Joon-ho, director, said you can push the stop button watching Netflix or YouTube, but in the cinema you cannot. So you have to
Right.
really go with director's rhythm or breath there. So, but there is huge advantage for us in being in live performance, and I don't think in a performance or in the concert of myself as well, it's not just we're playing and the audience is watching or listening to music. There is certain interaction between the performance and the audience as well, really the invisible energy. And in the opera performances as well, although I cannot see the audience, we all feel the energy from the audience and how today's audience is and how different that was last week, etc. We also talk about the audience as well. So, and for the audience as well, I mean, in being in live performance means you breathe together with people, you interact with people, and that is really important in our life, especially after COVID time or it's still in COVID time. Yeah,
Yeah, it's an experience. It's a whole
it is. It
experience.
is. Yes.
Yeah. And so we're gonna go pretty soon to the questions. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and then we'll bring the mic to you. But before we start going to the questions, we kind of mentioned like how busy you are. You're always traveling. Um, how do you find time for yourself? How do you relax and how do you take care of yourself?
I almost never find time for myself, especially when you're in a city for work. It's very hard to get relaxed, actually. But the well, I'm really grateful that I'm. We talked about that. That I'm actually enjoying my job. It's challenging, but I'm enjoying my job. So when I go from one organization to the next, I have to switch the repertoire, of course.
Right.
So when I kind of turn off the piece I did, and the next day, right away, with the new piece, it's kind of relaxation for me. Because you live with a different world
I see.
suddenly because you were really busy with one thing, but you move on
Mm.
and you have different repertoire, different people, different environment. That kind of
Constantly
right,
changing.
yes.
Mm.
So I think that gives me kind of a new, I don't know, new energy
Mm.
and also kind of relaxed moment somehow. Whether although it's work for me.
Mm. Great. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hand.
Yeah, if there isn't anyone in the audience, we have a question from an online viewer. Mark is asking, would you like to perform more contemporary opera if it were more commercially viable? It seems like the audiences prefer the traditional popular classics.
Well, I am planning actually in San Francisco to do contemporary operas because I um, I believe in that because whether it's Beethoven or Rachmaninoff, they the composers were in their time all contemporaries, right? All the symphonies by dead composers, they were at once contemporaries. So I'm planning it, and also the San Francisco Opera is celebrating its 100 years, the centennial, which is starting in September, and we're opening the centennial season with a contemporary opera by John Adams. So yeah, it's one of my goal in San Francisco.
Is there any dead composers that you haven't tackled yet and that you want to tackle?
The dead ones.
The dead ones, yeah, not the non-contemporary ones.
Well, in opera, I haven't started yet conducting Russian operas because I don't speak Russian yet. So I want to really speak that language first in order to. It's just for me. I'm not saying like all the conductors have to do that, but I'm going to conduct maybe Russian operas when I'm able to speak Russian.
Speaking of which, you speak like 4 languages, 5 languages?
6 languages.
Oh. So so as an opera conductor, you feel it's really important for you to actually understand the lyrics and
Well, not only for conducting operas, but also symphonies as well, because every composer can actually write a piece based on his language rhythm. And when they say like allegro or go faster here and there, everyone would feel differently about the tempo or speed. When there are people who speak really fast in their life, but also a little slower maybe, and one would understand just a little different. Also, let's say Beethoven and Schumann, it's all German speaking composers, but the nuance is different, right? So that's why I'm really concentrating on learning languages and really like diving into learning the culture as well. And in opera, obviously, there is text. So in order to get all the nuances, what the composer really wanted to create, I think it's very important.
that's fascinating.
And then we have another online question. This person asks, do you have a favorite opera to conduct personally, or is there one that you found that was exceptionally challenging?
The favorite opera is always that I'm currently doing. It's very natural because you are living with that piece for 4 weeks or 5 weeks. But apart from that, La Boheme, because I started with La Boheme actually conducting, and all the basic skills, there are basic conducting skills like 1, 2, 3, 4, or that kind of thing. I learned it with Boheme or through Boheme. So that was really the beginning for me. So whenever I conduct La Boheme, I kind of remind of my early
Your
years,
youth.
my youth. So it's very special, and yeah,
And what was most challenging one?
most challenging. Every opera is challenging, I think. Yeah.
Any questions?
If not, I can just keep spitballing. No, I'm joking. There's another online question, and this person asked, do you have any advice for any young person of any gender who is contemplating a career in classical music?
Well, when I was really considering, or when I was not really sure whether take this career or for the composition, my teacher, who actually recommended that I would study conducting, he said, before you go in your life, before you take any path, you cannot know what's going to happen. But at your certain age, when you look back your life, there's always reason why your life shaped in this in how your life shaped. And he said that I think you can just give it a try and go there, and then maybe the life will tell you how or why you took this path. And so the advice that I can give to my next generation is actually have that faith in what you are really believing in, and just take risks and go there, and then life will tell you. Yeah,
Was that the best advice you got, you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the most annoying advice you ever got?
You know, that's I cannot remember because um it's kind of my character.
Mm,
I think I'm very optimistic and positive person. So whenever there is a moment it's really annoying or like a comments, I really forget it quickly.
that's
But
nice.
also I forget, I try to forget the compliments as well very quickly, because it's, if you really don't pay attention, that kind of compliments will make you kind of feel elated or whatever. So I'm really trying to forget everything quickly.
So I saw on your Instagram, the latest posting on your Instagram, um, of how you ran into other conductors
Right.
at the Met, who are all conducting different operas, and three of you. It all happened to be female conductors.
Right.
So, what is it about time we stop saying female conductors?
Well, it will come. The time will come. Not only in classical music, but in politics or in other industry. I mean, it's not really long time that we started seeing female leaders in any organization or in any industries. That was really funny because whether it was just female conductors or male conductors, the conductors don't work together,
Right.
obviously, because there it's just you need just one conductor in one concert or in one performance, so we never interact. Actually, there is
Right.
no chance for us to meet each other, so it has to be always in the hallway or just really coincidentally you meet on the street, that kind of conductor or whatever. So we actually don't know how the other conductors are working
That's
because we
interesting.
never
Yeah.
see. But that was very interesting moment that in the dressing room of the conductor, because we share one dressing room, all the conductors at the Met, and in the break, just we ran into each other at once, and that happened to be three female conductors. So actually, we were happy to meet other conductors, but the orchestra musicians were so happy and they were so moved that they saw three female conductors in one dressing room.
Yeah.
And I think that will really normalize. And I'm also seeing in my symphony concerts in the States, especially when I go for a concert, I get an assist conductor for that week. And until now, I think half of them were female.
Wow.
So I happen to be always the first or the only female conductor. Now I'm kind of in an age when I see a female assistant conductor. Oh, you're a woman. Like I'm really surprised by how many female conductors are there actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we still live in that age of firsts,
Yes.
as you know, we
Yes.
kept
Yes.
you are being kept being called the first female this and first female that. Um, but you also mentioned the challenge of Netflix and other streaming devices sort of competing with the interest for classical music or live performances. What do you think? How do you think the classical music can sort of navigate this digital age?
I think the challenge for classical music is because people assume that would be difficult. I heard in the stage people would think like the classical music is difficult, or the building, the concertor or the opera houses or opera companies, it's maybe I don't belong to
Right.
those buildings or something because they think it's difficult. But it's all human story, whether it's a symphony concert or opera. It's all about human and about us. And being in a live performance, I really believe in that because there's this transformative moments where you can really feel those moments being in a live performance with people, surrounded by people. You cannot have that online, just watching the screen. It's really one way, actually. But surrounded by people in a live performance, because we're all human beings, I think it'll still go on with that. I don't think it's just going to disappear.
Think we have a question?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Brian, and
Hi, Brian.
you mentioned Bohème was a very important opera in your career. I was just wondering if you had a favorite recording of Bohème.
Favorite
Recording.
recording? Toscanini for Bohème, because he also conducted the premiere of Bohème. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi,
Hi.
thank you so much for coming. That was a wonderful talk. I have two questions regarding your favorites. Do you have a favorite composer, and do you have a favorite section in the orchestra?
Favorite section in the orchestra? Oh, well, I never thought about that.
Are you more a string person or a brass person or a wood person?
I would, well, I used to interact a lot with wind people when I was at university. So I have to say, I know maybe the wind player better. Not in music, like musically speaking, but in terms of their character or yes. So I feel maybe more comfortable interacting with them in the hallway. But the favorite composer, it's again, it's very boring answer, but it's always the current one. So interesting that also coincidentally, I have been conducting Puccini operas in this season. I think now it's my sixth
Wow.
production, only Puccini in this season, and that happened to be all really a coincidence because we had to also reschedule from COVID cancellations, etc. So I'm living with Puccini almost for a year constantly. So Tosca, Bohème, and Turandot, and I'm getting to know him better and better. Although I don't have any chance to speak with him, I have feeling that I'm getting to know him better and better. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I hope you'll have many, many more chances to get to know them better and better as we get to know you better and better. And hope you come back to New York. If you're watching, please check out whenever, because she is literally everywhere. So I'm pretty sure she'll come to the city where you are, wherever you are. So, and thank you so much for this lovely conversation. It's truly an honor to have you. We have some food and drinks ready for you all. So if hopefully you'll stay a little while to chat. But thank you so much, Vincent. It was really lovely to speak with you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.